The Interstellar Academy floated in quiet orbit above a blue gas giant. From the outside, it looked calm and bright, made of silver metal and wide glass halls. Inside it held students from many worlds. Some had scales, some had fur, and some had skin like stone or mist. They came from strong species, from planets with heavy gravity, harsh storms, or endless war. They were proud of who they were. Humans were different. Humans were small. Humans were soft. Humans broke easily. That was what most students believed. James walked through the long corridor toward his classroom. He carried a thin data pad and kept his eyes forward. He did not rush and he did not slow down. His steps were steady. To the aliens watching him, that calm walk looked like fear hiding behind control. James was a human exchange student. There were not many humans at the academy. In fact, there were only 6 in this entire wing. Many alien students believed humans were allowed here out of kindness, not respect. Why do they let him attend combat theory? One alien whispered to another. He would not survive real training, another replied. James heard none of this or pretended not to. He had learned early that listening to every insult only made things worse. Instead, he focused on his breathing and the lesson ahead. The classroom was wide and round, with seats rising in steps around a central floor. The ceiling showed a moving image of stars, slowly drifting. James took his usual seat near the middle, beside Emily. Emily smiled when she saw him. "Morning," she said softly. "Morning," James replied. Michael sat on the other side, already reviewing notes. Jessica and David were a few rows behind them, talking quietly. John, Ashley, Daniel, and Lauren filled other seats nearby. The humans did not sit together by plan but by habit. It felt safer that way. Around them, alien students watched. Some stared openly. Some glanced and then looked away. A few made no effort to hide their low opinions. One large alien with thick gray skin leaned toward his group. "That is the human," he said. "The weak one." Another alien, taller and sharp-eyed, replied, "All humans are weak. Their bodies fail too easily." Emily heard this and stiffened. James did not react. The instructor entered the room and the noise faded. The instructor was old, even by alien standards, with many marks of past battles across his body. His voice was deep and calm. "Today," the instructor said, "we will study survival under pressure." Several alien students straightened with pride. This was a subject they respected. The instructor continued. "You will learn how different species respond to stress, injury, and fear." A few eyes turned toward James. "Each species has strengths," the instructor said, "and weaknesses." James listened closely. He knew this lesson mattered more than the others. Humans were often judged by first looks alone. The lesson began with basic facts. Some species healed fast but panicked under pain. Some felt little pain but shut down when damaged. Others relied on armor like skin and failed when it broke. When the instructor spoke about humans, the room grew quiet. "Humans," the instructor said, "are physically fragile compared to many of you." A few aliens nodded, satisfied. "But," the instructor continued, "they possess high endurance under stress." Murmurs spread across the room. The instructor looked around slowly. "They are not built to avoid pain. They are built to function with it." James felt Emily glance at him. He kept his eyes forward. The instructor showed images of human history. Early space travel. Dangerous work. Long missions with little rest. Injuries survived that would have ended other species. Some aliens looked confused. Others looked doubtful. One student raised a clawed hand. "Instructor," he said, "if humans are so capable, why do they appear so weak?" The instructor paused. "Because strength does not always look loud." James felt that sentence settle deep in his chest. Still, doubt remained. Many alien students believed this was theory, not truth. Humans were still, in their eyes, protected guests. As the class continued, James felt the familiar weight of attention. Every movement he made was watched. When he shifted in his seat, some aliens leaned forward, waiting for him to stumble. When he typed notes, they watched his hands like they expected them to shake. But James did not shake. He wrote carefully. He listened. He learned. During a short break, an alien student walked closer to the human group. He was taller than James by a full head and far heavier. "You are here because of mercy," the alien said plainly. James looked up at him. His face was calm. "I'm here to learn," James said. The alien snorted. "You would not last a day on my world." James nodded once. "Probably not," he said honestly. That answer seemed to confuse the alien more than anger would have. Emily watched the alien leave. "You didn't have to agree with him," she said. James gave a small smile. Truth doesn't need defending all the time. Michael let out a quiet breath. One day they'll learn, he said. James did not answer. He did not know if they would. But he knew one thing: humans had survived worse than disbelief. The break ended and the lesson continued. The instructor assigned group observation tasks for the coming week. Humans were placed among alien teams, not separated. This caused visible discomfort among some students. As the class ended, the instructor gave one last statement. Do not mistake silence for weakness, he said. And do not confuse blood with defeat. James felt several eyes return to him. When the class dismissed, students filed out. Conversations filled the air. Some aliens laughed. Some argued. Some looked thoughtful. James walked beside Emily and Michael. He felt tired but steady. Behind them, an alien student watched James carefully. For the first time, his expression was not mocking. It was uncertain. And somewhere deep inside the academy, a quiet shift had begun, small, unnoticed, but real. The training hall was larger than the classroom, with open space and high walls made of layered alloy. Soft lights glowed along the floor, marking safe zones and movement paths. Students from many species gathered along the edges, watching the central platform. Today was a live demonstration. James stood among a mixed group that included Emily, Michael, Jessica, and several alien students. They wore light training suits meant to protect against minor force. The instructor stood at a control panel, explaining the exercise in a calm voice. This demonstration will show balance, timing, and response under pressure, the instructor said. The system will simulate danger, not cause it. Most students felt confident. Many aliens had bodies built for this kind of test. Thick skin, strong bones, fast healing. They had done similar drills since childhood. James listened carefully. He knew humans did not have those natural advantages. Humans relied on attention, control, and teamwork. The platform activated. Holographic shapes rose from the floor, moving in slow patterns. The task was simple: cross the platform without stepping into unstable zones. One by one, students went first. Large aliens crossed with ease. Others used speed or natural balance. The watching crowd murmured in approval. Then it was James's turn. A low sound moved through the room. Some aliens leaned forward. Others crossed their arms, waiting. James stepped onto the platform. He moved slowly, testing each step. His eyes followed the shifting lights. He breathed in then out. His movements were careful, not weak. At first, everything worked as expected. Then the system made a sharp sound. A warning light flashed once, too fast to fully register. The platform shifted suddenly. James reacted, twisting his body to avoid a collapsing zone. He landed hard on one knee. At the same moment, a sharp edge rose from the floor, not fully forming but enough. It cut his arm. The cut was not deep, but it was clean. Red blood flowed down his sleeve. The room went silent. For the alien students, blood was not normal. Many species did not bleed at all. Others bled only when near death. To them, exposed blood meant failure. It meant the body was losing control. Whispers spread like fire. He is injured. That color. He is bleeding. Emily took a step forward. James, she called. James looked down at his arm. He saw the blood. He felt the sting. Pain flared, sharp and clear. But he stayed standing. The instructor's hand froze over the controls. The system shut down fully. The platform lowered. Medical team, the instructor began. James raised his uninjured hand. I'm okay, he said. The words surprised many in the room. Blood continued to drip from his arm to the floor. An alien student whispered loudly, he will collapse. Another replied, they always do. James took a slow breath. He pressed his hand against the cut to slow the bleeding. His face was pale, but his eyes stayed focused. Emily reached him and stood close. Michael and Jessica followed. They formed a quiet wall around him. You should sit, Emily said. James nodded and lowered himself carefully to one knee. He did not fall. He did not shake. The instructor watched closely. His expression was no longer calm. It was sharp with interest. The alien students did not move. They stared at the blood pooling on the floor. To them, this was the moment. The proof they expected. Time passed. Seconds felt long. James did not scream. He did not faint. He did not beg for help. He adjusted his grip on the wound. It's not bad, he said mostly to Emily. Just a cut. An alien student stepped back. He should be dead, he said quietly. Another shook their head. No species survives that. The instructor finally spoke. Human student, he said, Are you able to stand? James tested his weight. His leg hurt but it held. He stood up slowly. A sharp intake of breath filled the room. James stood while bleeding. The whispers stopped. The instructor approached and examined the wound from a distance. Pain level? He asked. Manageable, James replied. The instructor looked at the blood again. You are aware that for many species here, blood loss like this would end the demonstration. James nodded. Yes, sir. And you continue. Yes, sir. The instructor was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to the class. Observe, he said. This is not system failure. This is misunderstanding. The medical team arrived, ready to take James away. James allowed them to clean and seal the cut. The bleeding stopped. A thin bandage wrapped his arm. Throughout it all, James stayed awake. Come. Where? Alien eyes followed every movement. Why is he not in shock? One asked. Why does he still stand? No one answered. James looked around the hall. He felt tired now but still present. Still himself. I can finish, he said quietly. Emily smiled, small but proud. The instructor shook his head once. No, he said. The demonstration is complete. He turned to the class. Remember what you saw, he said. You believed blood meant weakness. You believed injury meant the end. He looked at James. You were wrong. The students slowly dispersed, speaking in low voices. Some avoided looking at James. Others stared openly, no longer mocking but unsure. James walked out with his friends. His arm ached. His body felt heavy. But his steps were steady. Behind him the floor was cleaned. The blood was gone. But the memory of it stayed. And for the first time, the alien students did not whisper about humans with laughter. They whispered with fear and questions. The medical bay doors were open, bright light spilling into the hall. The medical team stood ready with equipment meant for full evacuation. They spoke in low, urgent tones, their eyes fixed on James. Human student, one medic said, you must be transported. Blood loss is dangerous. James sat on the edge of the bench. His arm was wrapped, clean now but it still hurt. His leg throbbed from the fall. Every part of his body reminded him that he was injured. He took a slow breath and shook his head. No evacuation, James said. The medic froze. You do not understand. Continued activity could worsen your condition. James looked up. His face was pale but his voice was steady. I understand, he said. I can still function. The instructor watched closely. Several alien students stood near the doorway listening. They expected James to weaken any second. To collapse. To finally show what they believed was the truth. Emily stood beside him, worry clear on her face. James, she said quietly, you don't have to prove anything. James gave a small smile. I'm not, he said. I just don't need to leave. The instructor stepped forward. This academy values survival, he said. But it also values knowledge. If you stay, you do so by choice. Yes, sir, James replied. The medics hesitated, then stepped back. They left equipment behind but did not force him to move. This alone caused a wave of whispers among the alien students. He refuses help. That is not logical. He is damaged. James stood up slowly. The room seemed to lean for a moment, then steadied. He took another breath. Pain stayed but it did not control him. The class returned to the training hall. James walked on his own. Alien students moved aside as he passed. Some watched his steps, counting them, waiting for failure. None came. David and Lauren joined the group near the central floor. David noticed the looks around them and spoke first, his voice clear. You think bleeding means death, David said. Several aliens turned toward him. For humans, Lauren added, bleeding is common. That caused confusion. Lauren continued, calm and simple. We fall. We cut ourselves. We break bones. And we keep going. An alien student shook his head. That is impossible. David pointed to James. You just watched it. James stood near the platform again. The system was repaired and stable. The instructor looked at him. You are not required to continue. James nodded. I know, he said. But I can. The instructor paused, then allowed it. The lesson resumed. James moved slower now. Each step took effort. His body sent clear signals to stop. He listened but did not obey. Alien students watched in silence as James completed the remaining path. Not fast. Not perfect. But complete. When he reached the end, he stopped and rested his hand on the rail. His breathing was heavy. Sweat ran down his face. He was still standing. A low sound filled the room. Not laughter. not whispers. So, one alien spoke at last. Your body is broken, he said. James looked at him. No, he replied. It's hurt. The difference mattered. Lauren stepped forward again. Many of your species shut down when injured, she said. You are strong, but only while whole. David nodded. Humans learn to survive while damaged. The instructor turned to the class. This is the truth you ignore, he said. You call humans fragile because they bleed. But you forget what happens after. He gestured toward James. He adapts. The instructor requested data logs from human history. Images appeared in the air. Explorers with injuries. Workers in dangerous places. Soldiers, medics, builders. Humans continuing despite pain. Alien students studied the images. Their expressions shifted from doubt to confusion, then to something closer to respect. One student asked, "Why do humans endure this?" James answered before anyone else could. Because stopping doesn't always mean survival. Silence followed. James sat down at last, exhaustion catching up to him. Emily knelt beside him, offering water. He drank slowly. You're stubborn, she said softly. James smiled faintly. That's one word for it. The instructor addressed the class one final time. You believed humans were weak because they break, he said. But you forget, everything breaks. Only some continue. Alien students left the hall quietly. None mocked. None laughed. Many looked back at James as they went. Not with pity, but with caution. And for the first time, understanding began to replace fear, not of human weakness but of human endurance. The next training cycle began 3 days later. Word had already spread through the academy. Alien students arrived early, speaking in low voices. They no longer laughed when humans entered the hall. Instead, they watched closely. James sat on the bench with his arm fully healed, the bandage removed. The pain was gone, but the memory stayed. Emily sat beside him, calm as always. Across the room, John, Ashley, and Daniel prepared for the next test. The instructor stood at the center. Today, he said, we will observe function under injury. A quiet shift passed through the room. Many alien students felt uneasy. For them, injury ended participation. This lesson challenged that belief. John stepped forward first. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and calm. The instructor activated the system, simulating limited movement in one leg. John's suit stiffened around his knee. Proceed, the instructor said. John tested his weight and adjusted his stance. He moved slower, changing his balance. His steps were careful but steady. When he reached the end of the course, he stopped and nodded. Ashley went next. Her suit restricted her vision on one side. She did not panic. She relied on sound and memory, moving with purpose. She reached out when needed, touching rails, adjusting without complaint. Daniel followed. His suit simulated sharp pain across his side. His breath tightened, but he kept moving. Sweat formed on his brow. He finished with a low exhale, standing tall. The alien students were silent. These are controlled injuries, the instructor said. But the response is real. One alien raised a hand. Why do they not stop? Ashley answered simply. Because stopping is a choice. The next test paired humans with alien students. This caused visible tension. Many aliens hesitated to stand near humans now, not out of dislike but caution. James was paired with a heavy-built alien student. The system restricted James's arm again, simulating weakness. The alien student froze, unsure how to proceed. Go, James said. I'll adapt. James adjusted his movement, relying more on his legs. When balance failed, he leaned into his partner. When the alien slipped, James caught him using his good arm. They finished together. The alien student stared at James. You supported me, he said. James shrugged lightly. Teamwork works better than pride. That statement spread quietly through the room. Instructors watched closely. Data screens filled with notes. One instructor changed a display. Another added comments. Lesson plans shifted in real time. Update human profiles, one instructor said. Resilience rating higher than expected. Fear in the room slowly changed. It did not vanish, but it softened. Alien students began to ask questions instead of making jokes. How do you train for pain? When does it become too much? James answered honestly. It's always too much, he said. We just learn to move anyway. John added, we're taught early that pain is information, not a command. That idea struck deep. By the end of the cycle, the humans stood together. Not separate. Not protected. Equal. The instructor addressed the class. You believed surrender was wisdom, he said. Humans believe endurance is survival. No one argued. When the students left, aliens no longer stepped away from the humans. Some walked beside them. Others nodded in quiet respect. James noticed it and said nothing. He did not need to. The academy had not changed its walls or rules. But something else had shifted. Fear had turned into understanding. And understanding had become respect. The records chamber was quiet, filled with soft light and slow-moving screens. This was where truth became history. What was written here would be taught, copied, and sent across the academy network to many worlds. Several instructors stood around a central table. Data from the recent training cycles floated in the air. Numbers, images, and notes shifted as they reviewed them. One instructor spoke first. Human classification no longer fits. Another nodded. Fragile observers is inaccurate. A third added, they function under injury. Survival rates increase with stress. The words settled. A final command was entered. The record changed. Humans were reclassified. Not as weak, not as protected guests, but as resilient survivors. The update moved through the system. Quiet. Official. Permanent. In the student halls, the change was already felt. Alien students spoke differently now. They no longer lowered their voices when humans passed. Some greeted them. Others simply watched with thoughtful eyes. James walked through the academy with Emily, Michael, and the others. No one blocked his path. No one mocked his pace. An alien student stopped him. You bled, the student said. James nodded. Yes. And you did not fall. James gave a small smile. No. The alien studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. I will remember that, he said. James continued on. In classrooms, instructors adjusted their lessons. Human endurance became a case study. Not a warning but an example. They spoke of bodies that fail but minds that persist. Of pain endured, not avoided. Of survival built on choice, not design. Students listened. Across the academy, messages were sent to home worlds. Short reports. Simple facts. Humans bleed, humans endure, humans continue. On distant planets, leaders read the updates. Some laughed at first. Others paused. A few felt uneasy. History had taught them that strength often arrived quietly. James returned to the training hall one last time that cycle. He stood where the blood had once touched the floor. The surface was clean now. Perfect. But the memory remained. Alien students stood with him, not behind glass, not at a distance. Together. Emily spoke softly. Do you think they understand now? James looked around. Some do, he said. Some will later. That was enough. The instructor entered and looked at the group. His voice carried weight now. This academy exists to prevent misunderstanding, he said. Today it succeeded. No one argued. As the cycle ended, ships departed the station. Students returned to their worlds. They carried stories with them. Not dramatic ones. Not loud ones. Just the truth. They had watched a human bleed. They had waited for weakness. And instead they had learned what strength truly looked like.